All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about in this chapter is solving quadratic equations. All right, so to solve quadratic equations, we need to find what are called the zero of a function. All right, and the zero of a function is the value of x for which your y is equal to 0, or when your f of x is equal to 0. So we're looking, it's when our graph crosses that x-axis. Right, so it's our zeros, and that's what helps us solve our quadratic equations. So to find the zeros of a quadratic equation where y is equal to ax squared plus bx, you solve the related equation and you set it equal to 0. Right? And the reason why we do this is we can use what's called the zero product property. If I give you two numbers, a and b, and I say that they multiply and equal to 0, well, the only way that this could be true is if a is equal to 0, or if b is equal to 0. Because if a or b are not equal to 0, you can't get 0 when you multiply them. 5 times 4 will give us 20, not 0. All right, so when we are solving for a quadratic equation, we are solving for what's called the zeros of the function, which is where our graph crosses our x-axis, or where our y value is equal to 0. When we have our equation, we take our y value and we set it equal to 0. All right, and what we're going to do next, there's a few ways that you can solve these, but the way that we're going to learn next is solving through the zero product property, which is where we are going to factor to solve. In this equation here, x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. All right, and it asks what are the solutions. So what are the solutions of this quadratic equation? So here we are finding the zeros, right? So what you want to do first is when you have your equation, first thing is you need to set it equal to 0 and write it in standard form. So it's ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. All right, so that's what you want to do first. So in this example, it's already set equal to 0 and it's already in standard form, so there's nothing we really have to do. So we have x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. All right, we're going to go over a few different types tomorrow besides factoring, where we are going to use a table to solve and where we are going to use a graph to solve. But for right now, we're going to solve this through factoring. All right, there's multiple ways we can solve this, but this method now, and the one that I will always suggest that you try first, is factoring. All right, so remember, when we're factoring, we look at the sign in front of our constant. That's a positive, so they tell us that our two signs are going to be the same. Well, how do we know which one they're both going to be? It's going to be that minus sign. So that means we will have two factored forms, and it's going to be two minus signs. All right, so now we need to ask ourselves, what numbers multiply to 6 but add up to 5? And if you're not sure, you can write out all your factors. 1 and 6, they add to 7. 2 and 3, they add to 5. Right? And since it's both minus signs, it does not matter where you put them because they're both going to be behind our negatives. So we have minus 2 and minus 3. And then x squared will always factor out to x and x. All right, so now think about what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, where we had if a times b is equal to 0. The only way that this could happen is if a was equal to 0 or if b was equal to 0. If neither one were equal to 0, it's impossible for two numbers to multiply and give us 0. So the same thing happens here. The only way that this can work is we have x minus 2 has to be equal to 0, or x minus 3 has to be equal to 0. So what we will do next then is we will take each one of these factors, x minus 2, and we set it equal to 0, or x minus 3, and we set it equal to 0. And then we just solve for each one. So we add 2, so that means x is equal to 2, and then we add 3, or x is equal to 3. All right, so those are the solutions of our equation, x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0, and we can also refer to those as our zeros. All right, there's one more example that we're going to do, and then that's it for this video. The last example we have, what are the solutions or what are the zeros, either way, you might see it both ways, of the quadratic equation x squared minus 7x is equal to negative 12. All right, so now, I told you before, when we're solving for these, we're solving for our zeros, so we need to set this equation equal to 0, and we need to make sure it's written in standard form. So in this example, if I want to set it equal to 0, I need to add 12 to both sides. So that way it's set equal to 0. So we have x squared minus 7x plus 12 is equal to 0. All right, so now we have it in standard form. It's set equal to 0. Like I said before, there's going to be other ways that we will learn how to solve for these. Right now, we're only going to worry about factoring. So we need to factor this so that we can use the zero product property. All right, once again, the sign in front of 12 is positive. So I know that when I factor this into my two factors, I will have the same sign. How do I know which sign they are? That's minus, so I know it's going to factor to minus, minus. So then we're looking for numbers that multiply to 12 that add up to 7. If you're not sure, write them out. 1 times 12 adds up to 13, so it's not those. 2 times 6 adds up to 8, so it's not those. And 3 times 4 adds up to 7, so those will be the ones that we use. Since it's both minus signs, it does not matter where you put them. It's minus 3 and minus 4, or you can write it minus 4 minus 3. X squared will always factor out to x and x. All right? As we said before, if you have a times b is equal to 0, well, the only way that this could be possible is if a is equal to 0 or if b is equal to 0. So both of these represent some number. So these are two factors that represent some number. So that means in order for this to be true, either x minus 3 has to be equal to 0 or x minus 4 has to be equal to 0. So we'll take each factor and we set them equal to 0. So x minus 3 is equal to 0 or x minus 4 is equal to 0. And then we solve each one individually. We add 3, x is equal to 3, add 4, or x is equal to 4. So these are our two zeros, or these are our two solutions of x squared minus 7x is equal to negative 12. All right, that is it for this video. In class, we will go through using a table, and then we will also go through using our graphing calculators to find the zeros. All right.